Hello, my name is Dave Simpson, and this is a story of Canada's Nato Brats. Brats was a name given to children of serving RCF personnel who were, during the Cold War, based in northeastern France near the German western border, living on a base called Marchell 1 Wing. The following stories come from the now retired Brats who lived there as teenagers with their families. Their journeys started in Trenton, Ontario, where all flights to France took off from, for the 13-hour flight over to Marchell 1 Wing base, flying over eastern Canada, Greenland, Iceland, England, and on to France and the base. From these stories, you may hear some strange words like PMQs, the personal married quarters, where the married families lived about 18 kilometers east of the base, or the trailer court, which was located across from the base, or John's Bar, where as teenagers we used to go and get drunk, or teen dance, where we went to dance.
My name is Dave Lowery.
Okay, and Dave, where did you live? You lived in Marchell, right? Where did you live before Marchell?
Well, let's see. Newfoundland in 1958. We initially went to Cold Lake, Alberta in 1961. Dad was an instructor on 104s there, and then he was posted to Marchell in 1964. So between 1964 and 1967, I lived both in Marchell, France, and Metz, France.
So where did you leave from? Did you leave from Trenton, or fly out of Trenton, or where did you remember?
Yeah, we flew on the Yukon aircraft, a 4-engine turboprop, 13 hours both ways. And flew straight into Marchell.
Okay, so you flew directly into Marchell?
As far as I recall, yes.
Okay, right. Now, how many are in your family? Who was in your family?
At that time, there was my mom, my dad, myself, and a younger sister.
Okay, and what exactly did your father do in Marchell?
He was a fighter pilot. He flew 104s and on 439 Squadron in a reconnaissance role.
I see. And how about your mother? What did she do?
She stayed at home and looked after me and my sister.
All right. So now, where did you live? The PMQs?
We lived in the C block of the PMQs, C22, and then C23, which opened up and happened to be a little bit bigger.
Okay. What are your memories of the PMQ? The things that we talked about before? Cutting yourself, falling off.
Yeah. I remember it being a very busy area. There was an awful lot of us living in, I'm guessing, about half a dozen quite large apartment complexes.
Okay.
In the center, there were baseball diamonds and great big fields where we could all play as long as we wanted to. We were all English speaking, so there was no integration at all in my age with the French at that time. Right. Everything was provided. It was a wonderful place to play. It was also pretty rough. I remember lots of fights. I remember lots of arguments. There was a quarry that I used to climb up and down that I eventually fell off one time and split my head open. But overall, it was squadron life and it was forces life, and everything was provided for. It was actually quite enjoyable.
Do you remember anything about the food you ate?
I remember lots of craft dinner.
Did you have a French maid?
No, we didn't have a French maid at all, no.
We had a French maid for a while. It didn't seem to last long, no, fortunately.
No, I remember actually there was a homeless guy that had a dog that used to hang around the PMQs, and Mom invited him for supper one time. So we didn't have a maid, but we did feed one of the French homeless men.
Oh, that's good. How did you find, now you're quite young, how old were you when you arrived?
I was 6 years old when I arrived, so I was in time just to spend the last few months in kindergarten.
Right.
And I did grade 1 and part of grade 2 in Marchell, and then part of grade 2 and grade 3 in Metz.
Did you have any problems adapting to your new environment?
I don't recall any problems at all, but that was the life we knew. We didn't know any different. We didn't know that some people actually stayed in one place their whole life. I remember on one of the times that we went through St. John, New Brunswick, where my cousin and my wife's sister lived. I remember going by a hospital and her saying, "That's where I was born." And I looked at her incredulously and said, "You live in the place you were born?" That was just unheard of. I thought everybody changed houses every year or two and transferred to different countries and different provinces. I thought everybody did that. It was normal to me.
My dad used to talk about them. He called them, he had a name for them. He called them civilians.
Yeah, exactly.
What are your memories of school like? Do you have any memories like of teachers in particular or sports?
The memories I have are school, again, it was quite early on. Nothing remarkable. I do remember falling in love with my grade 1 teacher, though she got sick, some terrible chronic condition and didn't last the whole year. But we were taught in a Canadian school by Canadian teachers under the Ontario education system. So it really wasn't any different than if you had gone to school in Canada somewhere.
Right. Do you remember your, now where was the school? Where was the, I didn't go to that level, so where was that?
The school was actually adjacent to the PMQ compound.
Right.
So it was literally, I might get the directions incorrect, but it was literally on the, I'm going to say the east side of the compound. And even as a young boy at the age of 6, I was able to walk to school with no problem. It wasn't very far at all.
Yeah, that's one of the blessings of living on a military base, you know, not far to the PMQs or the...
Exactly. Everything was provided for, including right beside the school that I attended was a department store with a selection of groceries and, you know, all the essentials were right there. So you didn't actually even have to leave if you didn't want to.
Near the PMQ?
Yeah.
Okay, great. How about the weather?
Don't recall. I remember there were skiffs of snow the odd time, which was unusual for me because we had come from Cold Lake. Yeah. And if anybody out there knows what Cold Lake is like, from about the end of October till the 1st of April, it was like minus 20, lots of snow. So it was different in France because if they had a little bit of snow, everything shut down. Right. Where in Canada, you just continue on. But they weren't used to it over there.
I see. How about friends? Are there any friends that you met that you remember you still keep in touch with?
I know names only because our families were quite friendly. I remember, for example, McDonald's. I remember the Frasers, a few others like that. But as far as actual school friends, I don't have any memory anymore from that time.
So I'm going to skip those questions about girlfriends.
Yeah.
Unless you had one.
I remember a girl kissing me standing in line in kindergarten and probably got thrown out of the class.
She did?
She did. Oh. And I got thrown out.
Okay, so how about, you know, during the summers, I mean, we're in Europe. Mm-hmm. Did your family go anywhere?
Absolutely. My parents, unlike some parents, unfortunately, there were some people that found moving all the time and transferring, they found it not to their liking, let's put it that way. In our household, it was always an adventure. So when we went to France, we took full advantage of it. I learned to ski in Austria. I learned to ski in Switzerland. We would camp in Italy, camp in Spain. We went to, I think, every freaking castle within 500 miles that my mom had to stop at. I got so sick and tired of those. But looking back, it was an amazing way to grow up.
Right. And a good chance to see all those places without paying a fortune. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Did you happen to go down to Saint-Tropez or, you know, the south of France?
I don't recall going
camping.
Like I said, we used to camp a lot at a place called the Laughing Whale in Spain, which was close to Barcelona. Okay. And it actually is still there. Oh. And I recall going to places in Italy also. The location doesn't come to mind right now. But we always took advantage of where we were.
Yeah, my family was the same. Like, I got sick and tired also of castles. And being a teenager, I get sort of like, no thanks, and I could opt out. So there's some questions here that you probably wouldn't have thought about when you were there. In fact, I didn't either. But I wonder if you've reflected on this since you've been an adult. Is the fact that the base was a sitting duck for. It would have been a first target of any attack, if there was a war started in Russia. Do you ever reflect on that?
I do now, but at the time I thought it was normal. I thought everybody lived on a base. Right. I believe we talked earlier in the car when we were coming here that I think the exercises that happened in the middle of the night were called snowballs. So what would happen is 2 or 3 a.m. all of a sudden there'd be sirens going off everywhere in the PMQs, and all the men had to jump in their whatever flight suit they had or whatever uniform they had and run to the base. And again, looking back on it now, it was a very odd way to live, but it didn't stress me because I just thought that was the normal state of affairs. Yeah, at that age, you just don't think about it.
Yeah, that's right. Just go with the flow. You were mentioning before, and I've got one of those questions here that we talked about in the car also, about practicing in case of a nuclear war under your desk. Can you relate that again?
I remember many times having to jump under our desk as practice for apparently bombs coming or something. But that sounds terribly ominous now for a little kid to have to get under a desk because somebody might be dropping bombs. Yeah. But did I actually believe that some were coming? Probably not. Yeah. It was just some ritual we did that we got used to. Yeah. We actually, because it was less than 20 years after the Second World War, we also were playing with stuff like old German helmets, and people would find war memorabilia all the time. We thought nothing of it. It was normal. We'd go play in bunkers. Yeah, I've got I won't mention names, but a couple of my friends found a smoke bomb and set it off in their room in the PMQs one time. Yeah. But thank goodness that they weren't injured. Right. One of them just laughed his head off.
Yeah, I mean, World War I was all in that area. I mean, Somme was just down the road, and what were the other ones? War memorials all over Verdun, also just down the road.
There was German bunkers left around that I thought that was normal too. Yeah. I mean, Dad would point out, oh yeah, that's a German bunker. It was starting to get overgrown at the time. We literally lived across the street from a German army, an ammo dump. Right. And I thought that was normal. You used it as a fort. You climbed all over it. It was normal.
Did you ever see, I remember one of the things I distinctly remember when we first arrived, we actually drove to Marchell, so I don't know exactly where we landed. Maybe it was Paris or somewhere. But I remember driving on the way, we passed an aqueduct. And I'm actually going to film there, hopefully in the near future. But do you remember that, any of the Roman leftovers?
I just remember a lot of castles. Like I said, my mother freaked out on castles, and we had to stop every time and look at these dirty old stinky things.
It's funny your mother freaked out on them because...
She loved them. She absolutely loved them.
Yeah. When you're packing up to leave, how did that work for you as a kid? What did you, like my dad said to me, I had 500 books, because I used to gamble with books as my teenager. We didn't have any money, right? So we used books to gamble. And he said, pick 12. I had about 500, I think, or so I thought. And he said, pick 12 and that's it.
I never recalled having to leave anything. Again, moving was something that was normal to me. Having movers come in, and thank goodness at that time the Air Force contracted out, and you didn't have to touch anything. At least in our situation, they would pack everything for you, pack it all up, and be sure it got where it needed to go. So I don't remember missing out on anything. I don't remember any of my material belongings getting lost or having to be left behind. What I do remember, having moved so many times, and this affected me in later life when I had my own pets, was we always had cats or dogs that we'd have to leave behind. I never had a dog or a cat die on me until adulthood, when I had one for like 20 years, and guess what happens? So it was always this terrible, terrible feeling of leaving behind a cat or a dog everywhere we went.
Wow.
So that's the only
We had pets
downside.
in Winnipeg when we were here, but they died on us before we moved. So I suppose that's fortunate.
I don't know what's better, having to leave a beautiful black lab behind, and it still tugs at my heartstrings.
Yeah, I never thought about that before. When you're a young boy, especially you've got a dog, there's a great attachment there.
Yeah.
And to have to give it away to somebody or somebody to look after, I guess.
And also, to be clear, the older I got, the harder it became.
Yeah.
Once you hit the teenage years and so on, I didn't want to move that much anymore. I was tired of losing friends and losing pets. And I'm grateful that at least for high school, I was in the same school for grade 10, 11, and 12.
Right.
Yeah, but the rest of the time, it was common to move in the middle of the year, the end of the year. It's just the way it was.
Right. And so the last thing would be, do you have any comment? I mean, if some kid was watching this film 20 years in the future, what comment would you like to leave to that kid?
I would say, remember the past. Research things like the Cold War, because though no shots were fired, a lot of people served very long to ensure the safety of Canadians, North Americans, everybody. It was an extremely important era. While I was very young and living through it, I didn't realize how pertinent and important it was. Yeah. Since adulthood, and after showing some kids through our display of the 104, F5, Sabre, and F18, some of those kids are astounded when they walk in there and they see the 104, and when I talk to them about what they did and the speeds they were doing in the 60s, they have no idea. It needs to be taught. It needs to be remembered.
And these are children of these are Air Force brats, or?
No, any kids coming in. We have school kids here at school tours all the time.
That's great, great. Well, David, thank you very much for spending this time with us today.
No worries.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Question number one for you is, where did you live before Marville?
We were stationed in Ottawa. My dad was in the forces, and we'd moved there from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, where he was also stationed. And we were in Ottawa just for about a year before we got posted to Marville in 1962.
Do you remember your thoughts about that?
I remember being very concerned, being uprooted frequently through our school years was always a challenge. Lose your friends, start new friends. Yeah. And had never been on an airplane before. I was 12 years old, my brother was 13, just the two of us with our two parents. And then landing in Marville, going out to the PMQs, and wandering around looking, no TVs, no telephones, no friends, hadn't been to school, so knew absolutely nothing about what was going to happen.
Right. And did you guys depart from your family? Did you depart from Trenton?
Trenton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You used the Yukon aircraft?
We did the Yukon. I think it was the previous year they stopped shipping people over by ship. Oh. And that would have been a nice experience, but they started to use the Yukon. So we trained from Ottawa, took the train from Ottawa to Trenton, and stayed one night in the PMQ, and then took the flight over to Marville. Okay.
And you flew directly into Marville?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how about your family? Who is in your family?
There was my dad and my mother, both deceased now for quite a few years, actually. They died quite young. And my brother, Darcy, who lives in Calgary now, most recently. He was in Saskatchewan. He was a year ahead of me in high school.
Okay.
And so that's all in our family.
What did your father do in the military?
He was a medical assistant at the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was stationed there for that purpose.
All right. And how about your mom?
She was a housekeeper, housewife, homemaker, whatever we call them nowadays.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
PC. So when you moved there, where did you first live?
We lived in the PMQ for just that summer and early fall, and then we moved to the trailer park right beside the air base.
Okay, so
and again, at that point, that seemed like a major move away from the friends we'd made into this trailer park.
Yeah.
So that we weren't too pleased about that, the kids anyway, and that turned out to be a very, very beneficial move for us.
It was. Now back to the PMQs. What do you remember about that? I mean, playing. What did you do around here?
You know what was really enjoyable for us. I recall that very first summer, my brother and I went out. We're playing catch on one of the ball diamonds. We'd never played organized ball, and the coach from one of the baseball teams. This was Pee Wee baseball. Little League baseball, pardon me, saw us playing catch and came over, and I guess his job every summer as people came and went, he had to recruit players. So he recruited my brother and I to play on the same ball team. And he made my brother a pitcher and me an outfielder, and we had never played ball and ended up on this ball team, and then from those 4 teams they chose an all-star team that would go and play baseball in between the leagues, in between the bases. And we ended up on that and won the championship for that year. So it was a thrill and a wonderful opportunity that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
So you had to make some new friends in the team there.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good way to make friends. Did you know any French young people around there?
No. And probably that's one of the regrets that we missed out on being in France. We didn't travel much. We got to Holland, we got to Germany and Belgium, very, very close local car trips. And the people that lived in what we called them the economy.
That's right, yeah.
Montmedy, just down the road. Those kids picked up French more because they lived right with the French people.
Sure.
But living in the PMQ or the trailer park and going to school on the base, we just got our high school French like we do here in Canada.
So then you got the message that you're going to move to this trailer park.
Yeah.
And then you arrived and you saw your trailer. What did you think?
That was pretty sad. We had this small bedroom for my brother and I. We shared a bed, a double bed, and my parents had a bedroom. We had a bathroom and a kitchen and a small living room and a porch. It was pretty low-key stuff.
Do you know why your dad moved there?
Yes, it was all money. It was I can't remember what the rent was at the PMQs. I'm going to grab a figure and say something like $50. But he bought this trailer for, again, I'm going to grab a number, maybe $500. And it was much, much cheaper over the 4 years to live in the trailer than it was to live in PMQs.
Okay, so you're plugged in the trailer court. Can you remember the friends you had in the court?
Yes, I remember. I've got in touch with a lot of them. I mentioned, earlier than this, Pierre Casgrain was a good school friend, and I've never been able to get in touch with him again. But the Harmer brothers, the Gagnon brothers, Pam Boyce, I knew, Anne Lang, all of my schoolmates. So there was a lot of my classmates lived there, and of course you stuck closer to the ones that lived in the trailer park rather than out at PMQ.
That's right. Did you hear about the bus crash?
Yes, I was there when the bus crashed, and
you were in the bus?
No, I wasn't, because I was on the base. But there's a picture of the young woman that died. Yes, and I'd have to pull it out. Might have been the '64 yearbook. I knew her brother, and she died in this crash.
How old was she?
She was older than me. I'm going to say she might have been in grade 12.
Oh, I see.
So
Well, I didn't hear about the crash until I think Marchell talked about it.
yeah, he was there. The same thing. Marchell was out at PMQs at the time, and he may have been on the bus. I'm not sure. Did he say that? Because that was the school bus traveling back and forth when the crash took place, coming home from school.
I think he was, because he said it hit a tree and it
Yeah.
bounced back and rolled over the other side of the road.
Yeah.
I never heard about it
Wow.
when I was living there.
Well, and a young woman who I'll use the word dating back then, was injured, had a head injury, and she was in the crash, but she survived.
Yeah, that's terrible. So, how about on the base there? You went to school. What grade did you attend when you were in the trailer court?
Grade 8, grade 9, grade 7, 8, 9, and 10. So 2 junior years and 2 high school years.
Yeah.
And I remember this again quite well, to toot my horn. The grade 9 and 10, they would have an award at the end of the year for the highest point grade average for all of grade 9 and all of grade 10. And I happened to win that both those years.
Great.
And I had some pictures of that. So that was quite a thrill to be, it was a pretty small nest though.
I never heard of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I missed a lot because other reasons, but that's good to hear. What did you think of the teachers?
The teachers, I was thinking of that before I came over here, and I don't have I remember the teachers, and I can remember some names, but I just don't have a recollection of them being important in my life.
Do you remember Mr. Anderson?
Yes, yeah.
He was my teacher at the end there. He was a great teacher.
Do you remember, maybe I shouldn't put this on here and you can edit it out, there was a shop teacher. Shop?
Yeah.
There was the shop, and I can't remember his name. He was shipped back to Canada. I'm not sure if Marsh would have mentioned this, because of inappropriate actions with boy students.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And we'd have to pull out the picture. That would have been early on. That might have been 62 or 63.
That's shocking.
It's very shocking. Now, we didn't know that at the time, and I learned this later after running into a lot of the high school friends, many, many years later.
Yeah. I did hear one scandal concerning 2 other people, but I never heard that one, that's for sure.
Yeah. He liked to get up and rub your shoulders and rub your chest, and sometimes a little, and so we learned to keep away from him.
Right.
You always keep a bench between you and him, and
I never experienced that. My dad would have done something to him.
wow.
So yeah, there was you mentioned the sports teacher, Mr.
McKinley?
McKinley, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a tough nut, wasn't he?
He was a tough nut, and not a fun type of fellow that you'd expect. It was all grim and business.
Yeah.
But I also had a story with that I remembered. As part of the gym class, we would go out and do running for exercise, and he would run us around the schoolyard and up around the corner and back, and maybe go on a mile-long run. And I remember, the group would spread out because some people were better fit. Yeah. And I remember passing him and getting back to the school before he did.
What did you say about that?
Well, I think it was after that he started to call me Greg sometimes.
Oh,
I think he kind of had some respect for that. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So you played baseball at the PMQs. How about the school?
In school, I didn't play in gym or track, but a lot of things like in the gym, badminton, swimming. The swimming team I was on for swim meets between bases. They weren't connected with the school, those.
Right.
They were just because we had such easy access to the gymnasium. We could walk over anytime we wanted. We could use the swimming pool and all the open hours. We could use the trampoline, which was a lot of great fun.
heard of it.
which was supervised, and that was really enjoyable. And hockey, of course, was the big thing. So I was on the inter-base hockey team, and I had a story about that too, which was funny. When we moved there, my parents always bought us second-hand skates and equipment because of cost, and the skates I bought were 2 sizes too large because you wanted to grow into them. And when I went out to try out for the hockey team, the skates were dull and they were very large, and I looked as though I couldn't hardly skate. So when they selected the teams, I was one of the last people to be chosen. And then after I got the skates sharpened and got some extra socks on, turned out to be a pretty decent hockey player. And like, you were a luck of the draw, if you will, that nobody thought you'd be any good. And we won the hockey championship for the base, and then for the inter-wings after that. So that was a wonderful opportunity.
You from the other guys, you mowed around quite a bit there, the other wings.
Yes. Yeah, and those were some, when you went to 3-wing and 4-wing in Germany, they were overnight stays because of the length of the travel. And we would get to sleep in the barracks and go for the supper and play our game the next day. It was a wonderful opportunity.
I remember going once outside of Marville to play anything, and that was into Germany. What was it? What was the Baden-Baden?
There was Baden-Baden, which was 4-wing. There was Zweibrücken, which was 3-wing.
Yeah. We went to Baden-Baden for track and field. And, that's all I can... Oh, basketball, yes. That was the two things.
Yeah.
I think it was the same time.
Yes.
Yeah. But one thing I wouldn't talk about was, we mentioned before, was hardly anybody had a television.
I didn't know anybody with a television.
Yeah. One of the young ladies down the road who just passed away, Janice, she was at the corner. What's her last name? I'll think of it. But she was at the end, and my last year there, I found out, we used to hang out together at nighttime, actually. We used to come out of the back of our trailers, because the trailer had a fire escape door.
Right.
So I used to use that to go visit my midnight skullduggery with Norman Crawley and those guys.
Yeah.
And Janet Spiro.
Don't know the name.
Okay, really nice lady. And she just passed, I don't know what happened. But anyway, she had a black and white TV and with French movies on it. So we went.
Yeah.
Okay, but my question was, in those days, without television really, or phones and things like that, you really had to use your imagination to think up things to do. What do you what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess in retrospect, I'd say that it was an opportunity as opposed to a detriment, whereas at the time I thought, oh, this is primitive. We couldn't phone home, we couldn't go to television. We would go into walk across to the base to watch a movie.
Yeah, that's right.
But it gave us time to get some part-time jobs. I set pins at the bowling alley for $2 on a night, and $2 was good money then, because the movie was 15 cents and a bag of popcorn was a dime.
That's right.
So it cost you $0.25 to go to a movie for entertainment.
Yeah.
And then later on I trained and became a lifeguard, so we got paid I think something like $1 an hour for that. That was very good money back then for a teenager.
Yeah.
And all those things that maybe if you were sitting in front of a TV set or sitting there with your iPad, you wouldn't have done as much.
Yeah.
But because of that, we simply were never at home. We would be, if we weren't studying or sleeping, we were over at the air base doing something.
That's a good point.
It was a very good opportunity for that.
Yeah, you didn't hang around in the trailer because there was basically nothing to do.
That's right. Too small, too crowded.
Yeah, that's right. 15 cents for a movie. Those are the good old days. Huh?
Yeah.
That's where I first saw those James Bond.
Oh, right. That's right. The early 60s.
They were big time.
Yeah.
And everybody had to stand up for God Save the Queen. Right? Remember that? Okay, so how about dating? Did you have any sweethearts?
Yes, I met a young lady. So this is grade 7.
Okay.
You appreciate that. Really young. And her brother, she was a twin. She had a twin brother.
Yeah.
And he played on the ball team.
Okay.
And his young sister came over, and she was in my grade. Joy Wood was her name. And we'd, whatever kind of dating you call it at age grade 7, but until they went home quite early. I think they went home the next year.
Some different questions. Something I just reflected on just a while ago was, Marville was a NATO base, and I heard from not Marchell, but David Lowery in the Calgary that the CF-104s, I knew they were fitted for cameras because that's a recon was a job that Marville airmen had to do, but they were also fitted for nuclear weapons, which were stored on the German side.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but what do you think about the fact, or did you think about the fact that Marville was a target if there was a war?
No, I honestly can say that I had no recollection of being concerned about being out of Canada or being in a NATO base and being involved in military conflict. We used to roam away from the trailer park. You remember there were some bunkers, some German bunkers from the Second World War that were still there.
Did you go in?
And I never got inside one, but up on top and around to see them. And there was sometimes concern that be careful because there might be unexploded shells or ammunition, that kind of stuff. Yeah. But other than that, I had no thoughts. I do remember visiting Vimy Ridge on a school trip and seeing all the bones in the trenches and stacked up and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that was a bit of an eye-opener.
Yeah, those trips were interesting, I thought. Now, some of the guys told me that in the younger grades, they practiced if there was a war, ducking under their tables and things like this. Did you ever do that?
No.
I never did. Yeah.
No recollection.
You're like me. I never gave it a passing thought.
No.
Just in this muddy field. That's all, surrounded by wheat. And trees. I mean, it really was out in the middle. When I went out there by train 4 years ago, there's this very fast train that goes from Paris to not Marville. It stops outside of Longueuil, and then you have to change your car. But from Paris to Marville is nothing but wheat fields. I mean, it's very flat. And that's how the Germans got in the second time, right across, Okay. The closing of Marville, when did you first, do you remember your thoughts at that time?
Yes, and it didn't affect our family. We, you recall, they moved families back to Canada or to the base always in June, so that, or in the summer anyway. Ours happened to be June both ways, so that it didn't disrupt the schooling of the kids. Yeah. And the summer of 1966 was, we were returned to Canada, went back to Ottawa, where my dad was stationed at the hospital. And while I was there, there had been talk prior to us leaving that the base was closing. And we were gone before any of the movement took place to Laar. So I wasn't involved with it other than letters and corresponding with my girlfriend after we left, because she moved, at that time, she moved to Laar. And Marchell went to Laar as well, if I remember correctly.
The thing that I just remembered is when my mum passed 2 years ago, she lived till 92, she had this carte de jour, and it was a green card that all women, and I even heard from, I think it was Marchell, that even the young women had to carry it.
Wow.
And I knew the married women had to carry it, and this card was only given to criminals and prostitutes, and the Canadian women had to carry it.
Wow.
The Americans said, forget about that.
Well, yeah. I don't know of that.
That's unbelievable.
Yes, it's wild.
I mean, I have mums at home, and amongst this stuff. I mean, why do that? It's a real insult.
Yeah, it's almost like with the Jews in the Second World War, that they had to be branded to show who they were.
Yeah.
And so these women had these cards, eh? Didn't know that.
It's disgusting, really. But just touching on the French again, so you didn't go down drinking, and so you never had any real contact with any French or?
No.
No. Me neither, and it's unfortunate, other than fighting with them.
Yeah, I think it was a missed opportunity to not take advantage. And I think if we were older, it would have made a difference. You know, you're 12 years old, 13 years old. The last 2 years, when I was 15 and 16, you started to have more of a knowledge of stuff like that, and being old enough to participate.
Yeah.
So if a person were over there maybe between age 15 and 19, you would have, I think, taken better advantage of it.
Yeah, my mother and father were not interested in the French population, which again is unfortunate.
Mine either.
Yeah, I mean, people, like you mentioned at the beginning, the people who lived on the economy, you know, their French was much better. And they took an interest in it. Pat Donovan and I, we didn't get any French because of Pat. We were in the same class, and we were in the French class.
Right.
And we were kicked out, the both of us, because he threw his books on the floor and he said, "I hate math and I hate English," and he had the French last. And he said, "I particularly hate French," and I was laughing with him. We were out and never to come back, so I really cooked our French.
I got together with David Harmer, Marchell Gummer, Pat and Garnet Donovan. They just lived down the road from here, maybe an hour away, hour and a half. And a couple of summers ago, we made a little reunion, the four of us, and had some reminiscing, not unlike what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And Pat brought up, he said, "Oh, you know," he said, "I remember you and your brother that at the swimming pool were doing all these fancy backflips and forward 1.5 dives, and you taught me how to do that."
Oh, really?
And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, Pat, I have no recollection of that, but I remember doing all the dives at the swimming pool."
Yeah.
So he had a good memory of that.
Yeah. No, when you packed up and you went back, where did you come back to?
We came back to Ottawa. My dad was stationed at Rockcliffe and at the Tri-Service Hospital at one point as well in Ottawa. I don't think it's called that anymore.
Right. Trudeau thing.
Yeah, so we lived right beside the air base again, Alvin Heights, Manor Park area, if you're familiar with Ottawa. You could hop on your bike and go onto the base, and which I did, play hockey.
You got a bigger room this time.
Yes, we had an apartment and still shared a room with my brother, but at least we had separate beds. And my parents had a bedroom, and we had TV and telephones and back.
Modern convenience.
Yes.
So what did you do? Where did you? You said you worked in the bank. How did that work in later on? Or?
Yes, I finished high school. I started Carleton University and dropped out. And looking for a job, I worked in the post office for about 3 months and became a trainee with the Scotiabank. Okay. I ended up on a hockey team that had a lot of Scotiabankers, and got to know somebody that was involved with the hiring, and they hired me on as a high school graduate and stayed there for 34 years.
So you retired from the bank?
Yes, and we lived in Ottawa, we lived in Trenton. That was fun, going back to Trenton for 3 years with the bank, and then back to Ottawa again, and then to Toronto for 8 years, and then to Kingston for 8 years before I retired.
Are you married?
I'm married, yes. We have no children.
Okay, cool.
So being with the bank was not unlike the armed forces, getting moved and transferred from location to location for an opportunity to advance.
Right.
So it's a little bit upsetting to the family life, but my wife worked for the bank as well, and so it worked for us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. To finish up, if this film was, let's say somebody 30 years down the road was watching this film, what message would you like to give that future person?
Wow, that's a long question. I think if it would depend on their life stage. If they were children, I would tell them not to turn their back on an opportunity that might let them grow and see things that they wouldn't if they just stayed in the same location. Mm-hmm.
See your environment.
Yeah. To many of the people I know here in Kingston, they were born here, they went to school here, they've lived in the same, not in the same house, but when they got married, they lived in the same house, and they've never lived outside of a small community like that. And I think that's fairly common if your parents had a job in an industry. But in the armed forces, or in my case in the bank, the opportunity to move and grow and see different things and to experience different communities, those kinds of things are upsetting to you as a youngster, but in retrospect, I think they're an opportunity. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for participating in this. Thank you for taking time for this interview.
Not a problem.
So, where did you live before leaving for Marville? Where did your family live?
Yeah, we lived in Bagotville, Quebec.
Oh, Bagotville. Okay.
Yes.
And what did your dad do?
My dad was the base pharmacist at the hospital.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And when did you first get wind that you were going to overseas?
Well, I think it was my mother, and I got to be honest with you, I was petrified of flying in airplanes, and there was talk that I was going to go over on a boat or maybe go to a private college and stay back, but eventually they allayed those fears.
Okay, wow. Private college. Yeah. All right, so you left from Trenton, did you?
Yes, we did, yes.
Okay. And did you leave on the standard Yukon aircraft?
We sure did.
Yeah, I'm looking for one of those. I want to put it in the film here. So you flew over there. Did you fly right into Marville? Or?
Yes, we did.
Okay. In our case, I don't know where we landed. I think it was like somewhere in Paris, and then we drove for some.
No, we landed right in Marville.
Right into Marville. Okay, that's great. So about your family, like your father, mother, any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I have one brother. His name is Greg.
Okay.
He's a younger brother. I have a younger sister named Melody, and the youngest is Carol.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So were they around when you moved to Marville?
Yes, they were. Yes.
Okay. So in Marville, so where did you live? The trailer court?
No, we lived in the PMQs, and we lived in B block.
B block. Oh.
Yes.
What are your memories of B block and living in the PMQs?
Well, it is interesting when I think back of having instructions for what to do in case of an air raid. That was quite daunting. Do you remember those you don't remember that? Like in each floor, and it was also interesting, my dad being the pharmacist, every PMQ block, there was basically a mini hospital down in the basements.
Wow.
And I remember going with my dad. He had to go and check to make sure all the provisions were okay. But I remember running through in the basement. I mean, it was a fun life.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Because we had no television or anything. We had to go out and play.
That's a good point, and I didn't bring that up with David. Is that we had no TV.
No.
You had to use your imagination.
That's right.
And I think that's a big difference with our group than say other people who.
That's right. Yes.
So I never knew about those underground hospitals, or I never attended any or remember any emergency preparedness for practicing, like getting under your desk or whatever. Like David said, he got under the desk.
See, I don't remember that, but I do remember, and here again, as a kid, when you're 14, 13, your whole life ahead of you, I must say that I was petrified of a nuclear war.
Oh.
And in particular, I'll go back a little bit, living in Bagotville, I remember being sent home from school when they had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and all of the
63.
Yeah, and all of the airplanes on the base were on full alert with nuclear warheads. I mean, we were in the Cold War.
Now that was all right. So going back to B block, what memories do you have as a kid doing? What did you do around there? What games did you play?
Well, I remember we did a lot of bicycling.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Every Friday night we would come home from school on the bus, and then we'd get all spiffed up and go out to the base and go to the movies. That was the thing. to do.
The French driver and the little, I think it was a red bus, wasn't it?
Or I think it was orange and yellow. Well, I was on the one that went off the road and hit the tree. I don't know if you remember that accident.
I remember that, geez.
You don't remember that?
No.
Yeah, it was quite serious. Yeah.
People,
Well, there was 4 of the people, because see, everybody wanted to sit in the back seat, but after that accident, nobody wanted to sit in the back seat, because there was 4 of my classmates or people you would have known that got thrown out and ended up on the road. And one of the girls was severely injured. I can't remember her name, but I'm sure there's photos of me just white standing there, because it clobbered the tree, then went across the road and rolled over on its side.
oh my, and lucky nobody died.
Nobody died.
What
No.
was that, 64?
I think it would have been 64, yes.
I remember that bus going back and forth. Maybe that's why Dad moved us to the trailer. But I remember the other things we did on the bus because there was nobody using the back seat, but it had to do with girls. All right, well that's horrific. I mean, those roads. I remember accidents like a motorcycle accident that happened. I won't mention it on tape here, but people lost their lives.
Yes.
Dangerous roads. Okay, so now you attended, where did you attend school? At the PMQs or on the base?
It was on the base, yes.
On the base.
Yeah.
So every morning you took the bus.
That's right.
All right. So, yeah, so you haven't been back there, have you?
No.
Well, that so-called high school building, converted barracks really, it hasn't been used. It's still locked up and looks like it did the day we all...
Wouldn't it be wonderful to get in there?
Yeah, maybe the chalk is still on the board, you know?
Well, and is the shop still there?
Oh, yes, I remember the wood shop. That's right. Who were your teachers?
See, I remember, oh man, I'm trying, well, I can say it. There was this very pretty blonde lady, and...
She was Miss Calgary?
I can't remember
There was
her
somebody,
name.
Miss Calgary. She came the last year. Was that 67?
I think so. Well, maybe 66, because I remember one of the teachers got one of the brand new Mustangs, and we had a contest in the some sort of a contest. Whoever got the higher marks got to ride out to Verdun and spend some money at the PX, and that was quite a treat. I think his name was Mr. Grodsky.
I can't remember.
Grodsky.
Anderson was a favorite math teacher.
Yeah.
And but there was Miss Calgary, and I can't remember, but Mr. Anderson married her. But I remember the day she arrived because, all the girls in high school had to wear long dresses.
Yes.
Guys had to have, short hair.
Yeah.
We weren't used to this Bob Dylan type thinking, And he was kind of in that, he let me sit in the front, and we had contests throwing screwed up paper into the wastebasket. Well, I thought this guy, I don't know where this guy was at, But, all right, so let's, so were you in any sports?
Yeah, I played hockey. That was my big sport, and we had an all-star team for the base, and that was our winter activity. We'd hop in one of the Mercedes buses. I guess it was the officer's bus, and we would head off to one of the different wings to play. We spent a weekend up in Amsterdam in a tournament. We spent there was a tournament in Liège, Belgium, and hockey.
Oh, that's great.
That was the big sport to play.
Is there anything you can remember from school, such as like girls you knew? Or...
Well, yeah, a lot of them. Yeah, I do. I'm friends with some of them on Facebook, but yeah, it's interesting. I remember them more than more recent friends, say in Kingston. That it was the formative years. It was great over there.
How about the food? Can you remember? I mean, unfortunately, my family was very. They didn't mix with the French at all.
Neither did we. We ate what I'll call PX food.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did not go out on the economy. Because my mother was always conscious of food safety and that type of thing. And it was very difficult even when we'd take a vacation, because I'm sure your family did. One summer we go to Spain, another summer we go, and we had to take all of our food with us or go to the American base. And every so often my mom would relent. I remember having chicken in Barcelona. I mean, it sticks in my mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be good. There's good food around.
Sure there is.
But my dad, I think my parents were a bit, you know, they didn't like to mix at all, which is unfortunate because
Right.
it was a great opportunity to make friends.
Yes.
But the only friends I made, well, the only time I talked to French was when we played soccer, and we always lost. So I'm glad you guys made up for that.
Oh, we sure did, yes. Oh, and that reminds me, in the summertime, baseball.
Oh yeah, at the PX.
Baseball
At the,
at the PMQs, yeah. Remember we had a number of baseball diamonds there. But I was a little shorty, so they put me in so that they couldn't pitch to me.
Okay.
They even used to do that in Bagotville.
Okay.
How do you think I felt as this little shorty kid?
Yeah, it's. I didn't get involved in baseball. You know, living in the trailer court, there was nothing around there. There was no baseball.
Right.
It was just the trailers and that and fields. That was it.
That's right.
All right. So we'll talk about your teenage time. Do you remember going to the teen dances?
Yes, I do.
That
Yeah.
was fun, right?
It was, but I must admit I wasn't a dancer, and I'm still not. It's quite funny. So it was kind of difficult. I remember they used to have Sadie Hawkins, and I remember the one girl that had asked me there, and eventually I relented and got up and danced. I don't know what it is with me, but
Well,
yeah.
we were all shy, I think, you know. You went to teen dance. Did you go to Longueuil Bar? Did you ever go there?
I did. I didn't drink.
Okay.
But I definitely went, and just some interesting stories. I mean, well, there was no drinking limit age, was there really?
Right, yeah.
You could drink as you wanted. But I remember a guy named Jerry LaPlante. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a huge Beatles fan, but he used to drink something that had this green stuff in, creme de menthe.
All the girls like that.
But he didn't realize there was no alcohol in it.
Oh, okay.
There was no alcohol in it. And I remember him bragging about being able to drink 12 or 15 of them without feeling tipsy.
Yeah, of course.
Well, then there was another drink that had the grenadine, if I'm not mistaken.
Grenadine, yeah.
That was a red one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So the green was creme de menthe, but they would pour it. But I know some of the people, I didn't drink.
How about, this is a big one, summer holidays.
Oh,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect place to be. Where did you go?
Well, one summer we went to Spain.
Okay.
Another summer, Italy. Another summer, it was Austria and the Alps. And one summer, it was, because basically I think we were there for 4 years, and then one summer it was England. And we had a Sprite Musketeer. I got to give my dad credit for towing that behind the Peugeot station wagon with no air conditioning. And if you can imagine being in Rome, Italy, how hot it is down there. But I mean, that was the highlight, being able to travel through all of those countries.
Right. So next questions are something a little different. We touched on at the beginning was, I never thought about this until fairly recently, that we were sitting ducks for a nuclear attack or some kind of attack.
Sure.
You know, like, and I cannot remember ever practicing for, you know, the parents did, you know, the fathers did, right?
Yes.
You know, the air raids in the middle of the night and hit that.
That's right, and they had to all go out to the base.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
somebody was dead, and they were practicing first aid, and we kids had to stay inside, you know, no school for a couple of days. But what do you think about that? I mean,
Well, I'll use the word again. I was petrified.
yeah,
I mean, I thought about it constantly. And when did basically the Cold War end? I mean, I was ecstatic. I mean,
yeah.
even though I was quite a bit older then, I thought, you know, this is great for young kids to not have to worry about this. They got enough to worry about now than that.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's something for me it was. I think one of the reasons I delayed getting married till I was 40 was, why bother? Because we're going to get nuked, you know.
Sure.
It does play on your mind.
It does, yes.
So did you? I can't remember ever doing any. I mean, anything to prepare for an attack.
See, I don't either. I do know there was instructions on every floor of the apartment buildings, which I would look at, but we never, I know as you had mentioned, the adults, the air raid siren go off at any time, and they all had to go out to the base.
Yeah.
Which was rather dangerous when you think about it, because you know, what if somebody had been drinking or something? I do believe there was some pretty serious car accidents.
People running to. Yeah, I mean,
the trees along the roads, there was a lot of car accidents.
yeah. I don't know if you remember this, but I never actually heard it firsthand, but I was told that there were communist rebels or communists in the hills, and that they knew they had a radio station, and they would talk to us. You know, hello. They knew who had a baby and who had just arrived and who was just departing, and they would have this radio station where they'd say, "Hello, Canadians in Marville base. Congratulations to Mary Dawson for a new baby."
I'd never heard of that one.
Yeah, I actually never heard it firsthand, but I was told that went on. You know, they had a radio station.
Really?
Yeah, and they knew. Well, of course, all the French worked on the base, so it was fairly easy, I guess, to pick up information.
Sure.
But I also didn't know that we had, at one time, we had nuclear weapons there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and the starfighters were. David Lowery just told me that they were equipped to pack nuclear weapons.
Yep. Because I know in Bagotville, I remember when the Voodoos came in, and they had nuclear weapons on the base in Bagotville.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
What did you? Now, you know, like we talked about the French a minute ago. What do you think about the fact that we had a base in France and didn't really mix with the French? You know, like some people did. They lived on the economy.
Yes.
They call it the economy.
Right.
And I think that's kind of neat. They live with a family and then they mix.
That's right.
The language. Do you feel any regret that you didn't mix, or?
In some ways, it would have been nice. I'll just tell you an interesting story about my father being the base pharmacist. And I used to remember somebody told me that in every little French village, the pharmacist is the wealthiest person.
Oh.
And I remember my father, he had to go down to get narcotics at the fancy pharmacy in Longuyon. And me being a car racing fan, he took me down there one day, and we went in behind the back, and there was 2 Porsche 904s. Oh. These were strictly cars meant for the racetrack. So it would have been nice to have got to know the pharmacist's sons, you know, who race these cars. Like that's the interesting thing, because I did not have any contact with any of the French people.
Yeah, I didn't either, and I regret that. I mean, except for John at the bar,
right?
Bar owner.
Yes.
And he's one of the. I think he's still around. He's one of the guys I want to interview. Pierre's going to.
That's wonderful.
The French base commander is still alive, or the French base commander that took over later on, and there's a few people still around. So I hope to catch them later in May. So final question is, how are we doing? Oh, perfect. Final question is, if somebody was looking at this film 30 years down the road, what message would you want to give them?
Well, obviously I think it's to get across what a wonderful life we led.
Yeah.
I don't know what things are going to be like in 30 years, but, you know, with the kids of today that are on their phones all the time and on computers all the time, we played, and I would hope that 30 years out that society has changed, that we get back to that, because I even think of my youth building tree forts and going down the creek at my grandmother's and the big family picnics. We've lost a lot, and hopefully somebody in 30 years out would say, wow, they led an amazing life.
Hi, Judith. Long time no see.
Yeah, so I hear. 50 years.
50 years, that's just a drop in the bucket.
Oh, I know. I was a baby.
Where did you live before you went to Marville?
We were in Comox, and then
Okay.
I moved to Marville in 1964.
Comox, so just around the
BC.
corner here. Mm-hmm. Right. And when you heard about going overseas, what did you think about that?
I was really, really excited. It was like an adventure that I couldn't even imagine.
How old were you then?
I would have been 15.
15, okay, that's a good time, teenager, and you know what's going
but
on.
I don't think my parents thought it was a good time, but I had a good time.
Okay, in the military.
My father was a station warrant officer. They are.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes I didn't tell people what my last name was.
Right, yeah, yeah. I can understand why, thinking back. So you were posted overseas. You went directly to Marville?
That's right.
Did you go by boat or by plane?
We flew
On the
from Trenton.
Yukon?
Yes.
Right. What was that experience like? Because it's
That
quite a
was,
long...
well, it was great, but when we got to Trenton, my parents met some people that we had known in Bagotville when I was in grade 2 and 3, the McLeods. So I went over with Brian McLeod and his family, and he was known as Bozo when we were in Marville.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Our PMQ was ready, and we were on the 3rd floor in B block. Yes.
Now, your dad was a warrant officer, so do you guys get... Was it a little nicer, do you think, apartment, or...?
No, same as everybody
Same
else.
as everybody else. Okay. And your mom, what did she do?
She was the secretary for the chaplains, Father Tom and
okay.
Padre Parkos.
All right. And so how many brothers and sisters?
I'm an only child.
Only child, okay.
I thought everybody in Marville was an only child. I didn't know people had little brothers and sisters. I keep saying to them, you had a sister?
Right, okay. So you lived in the PMQs the whole time you were over there? How long did you stay there
3 years.
in the PMQs?
In 3 years. And then we left in July of 67, I think, the beginning.
Now, you were 15 when you arrived. You weren't running around in the basement there, were you?
Oh, yeah, that was a great time. Halloween was super, and the cops would be chasing us in and out. It was,
Right.
and I remember the firecrackers going down the garbage
yeah.
chute.
Yeah. Do you remember, were the police chasing you around in Longueuil?
No, it was the military police. It would have been Halloween with people
I
letting
see,
off
the military police.
firecrackers and things like
Not
that.
the gendarme.
No, the gendarme. No.
Okay. So school was where? On the base?
No, I went. There are barrack blocks on the.
What, you were supposed to start off what, in grade 9?
I was there for 10, 11, and 12.
10, 11, 12. Okay, gotcha. What are your good memories from that?
I loved going to school in Marville, and I think we had a great group of teachers, and they really inspired you, and they were fun, and for me to go on to university, a few of them were the people that inspired me to go into those areas.
Oh,
I
okay.
really like Mr. McKinnon brought history alive, and you know, you were kind of living the history itself. And then Miss Dion was the phys ed teacher who really showed me that there could be a career in PE, like teaching phys ed.
Okay, is that what you finally did? Okay, great. How about friends?
What's funny about our friends is I think they became your family because no one was there to have Christmas with you or your aunts and uncles. Anyway, for people that went back to England to see their aunts and uncles, they saw grandparents and that. But Christmases, we always had people for Christmas that are our friends, and it was a time where you were maturing and growing up, and they
Did you
became
have a
very.
Christmas tree?
Oh yeah.
You did?
We always had a Christmas tree. My mom and dad always had parties, and yeah, it was great.
Good. So the girls that you hung around with, like Heather and the other girls, is there any particular thing you sort of, we mentioned in another conversation that there was no television, and did you have
I think that was,
television?
no. I think that was great there was no television
Right.
or phones. The only thing, the problem without having a phone was if you had a 10 o'clock curfew and you wanted to stay out later, would you go home at 10 o'clock or take the flak and go home at 11 o'clock?
Take the flak, what does that mean?
Mean that if you went home at 10 o'clock and said, Mom, can I stay out to 11?
Yeah. You
You certainly weren't going to get it. So you'd stay out to 11 anyway and be grounded the next week.
All right, right. So what did you do with your friends there?
Well, Pat Han and Betty Conrad and I taught swimming lessons on the base. So we did, that took about quite a bit of our time, and then just going like to the mezzanine in Teen Town and going down to Longuyon.
Did you go to the movies?
Not very often, I don't think.
Theater that was there, yeah.
And also, too, I didn't go on to, like, I went on to the base to work, but I didn't stay on the base. Like,
So you
later.
went to Teen Town on
It was called
Friday. Teen Town, was it? Yeah, Friday night.
Friday nights.
Yeah. Did you enjoy that?
I loved it. Yeah, it was fun. It was a bunch of, you went as a group and you had a lot of fun with your friends. But also people I knew was, Wendy Eilers was a friend of mine, because I'm a little bit older than them. Wendy Eilers and Heather Cartner. Did you know Heather Cartner? Or, and Pat Hannon.
Pat Hannon, okay. So how about boyfriends?
I just went out with a group of people. Like, you know, it was, we
It was
always
always the guys and girls together.
yeah,
Right.
and that, you know, everybody would go down to John's to have a few drinks, and you'd have people helping you get back up that hill.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that hill because we got into trouble for singing rock and roll songs.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, did you speak French?
Just a little bit.
Right. I can't remember, but the French they were teaching in school, was that Quebecois or was it
I don't know.
Parisian French?
Parisian, I think.
Parisian, yeah.
Miss Dijon was a French teacher.
Right, I remember her.
Yeah, me too.
So you never had a chance to actually meet French people or talk to them? Or
No, but it went into the shops and things like that, and you
Right.
talked to people. And
Right.
we had an excellent home ec teacher, Mrs. McKinnon,
Okay.
and she'd send us all down to the fabric shops in Longuyon. And, you know, you converse with people there. They
Right.
have beautiful things.
So probably the chance you got to really use your French was at John's bar.
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a look at.
You didn't ask me what I like to drink.
Oh, okay. What did you like? What did you drink?
Martini Rosé.
Really?
And when I came back to Canada, I ordered a martini,
Uh-huh.
and I got this thing with gin in it. And
Oh.
I couldn't believe it, because we all thought martinis were Martini Rosés.
Right. And what was a martini made of in
Canada was gin and tonic. Or no, gin and vermouth.
In France it was?
No, the red, you know, the red martini?
Yeah. Okay, so what was mixed in there?
Nothing. It was on the
Just straight-
rocks.
Oh, just, okay, gotcha. Yeah, the French know how to live, right? No, when I was in John sometimes, and there'd be some girls in there, and I'd be doing my best to hustle them, and the young men would come from Belgium. Did you ever see them? No?
No.
Sometimes the Belgique young fellas come in there, and they're all dressed up nicely with suits on. And,
No, I don't remember that at all.
no, they would take over the whole bar. And,
Oh, really?
oh,
no,
and
no,
they'd
I
take the
don't.
girls and everything. It's terrible.
No, I don't remember that.
No, okay. Do you know what went on upstairs?
No, and I didn't. I asked Ann. I didn't even know there was an upstairs.
Yeah, neither did I. Okay, so were there any particular instances that you can remember? Like, for example, the question about the fact that it was a NATO base and it was a nuclear. It could be armed as a nuclear base. So sometimes. I don't know if you heard, but you know, we all had radios, and sometimes you'd get the communists that were in the hillside speaking on the radio in English to people in Marville on the base there. Did you ever listen to
No,
that?
I didn't know that. The only thing I listened to was Radio Luxembourg
Oh, okay, in English,
in English.
right? That was the only form of entertainment, I guess, really.
Yeah.
Really?
We got the modern songs
Right.
from Britain.
Now, when you got the word you were leaving, what did you think about that?
I was quite sad because my plan had been to go after grade 12 was to go to University of Strasbourg for a year
Okay.
because it had transfer courses to Simon Fraser. And so, and when I was coming home, I hadn't applied for any other universities. So I did grade 13 when I came back to Comox, and then I went on to UBC.
I see. So you didn't go to
Lahr.
Okay. Straight back to
Canada.
To Canada, right? Where did you?
Comox again.
On Comox, right. So at least that was good for you. You were landing in some place you were familiar with.
It was because I had a few friends that came back to Canada and found themselves like a fish out of water. Whereas I came back and I had friends, I had a group of friends that I had gone to junior high with that were in grade 13, and it made it easier for me to move into that situation. But I did find that I was really lonely. Like my friends in Europe were really very close, and they still are.
When did you, this is a question I haven't asked anybody, but when did you reconnect with those people?
I was always friends. Well, when I got married, Padre Parkhouse was the minister. Mr. McLeod was head, I don't know what you call it, MC. And Pat Hannon was my maid of honor. So Pat and I stayed in contact at university. There was quite a good deal going on when we were going to university, because we had leave passes to get back and forth to school.
Okay.
Till our fathers figured out we were using the leave passes sometimes to go and see each other.
Oh, whoops. All right, so any other memories that really stick in your mind from being in Marville?
The ability to travel places. I think all of us took the Herc down to Sardinia for a while.
What's a Herc?
That's the aircraft.
Hercules.
A Hercules. We all went to Sardinia, traveling with friends on vacations and things like that. Yeah. That's what I really enjoyed the most.
Some people mentioned that when they came back to Canada and they told their Canadian civilian high school friends that they were living in France and going to Paris and these places, that there was a lot of envy there. And
I never felt that.
No.
But I was coming back to friends.
Yeah, you'll come back to Comox too, right? Okay.
Canada has a long and proud military history, but the taxpaying public, called civilians, may have no idea what this military subculture goes through every time they move from one base to another or one country to another, where the children of these Air Force personnel spend their childhood throwing away 90% of what they owned every time they moved, and saying goodbye to all their friends again and again, not having pets, constantly changing teachers and schools, and making new friends somewhere else in some other province or country. Some thrived on these moves and some did not. Thank you for watching, and please support your military families as much as they support you.